These folks for the next hour, and why don't you go ahead and introduce yourselves? Darrell?
Sure. Good luck handling us. We're wild. We can't be tamed. But yeah, I'm Darrell Harris. I do a lot of work behind the scenes on Torg and some writing, and I ran the line for quite a while. Now that is in Greg's solid hands, but I still participate. And what I'm mostly working on now is Space 1889 for Ulysses, hopefully coming in 1.5 to 2 years.
So, Brian?
Hi, Brian Reeves. I'm one of the writers. I've mostly focused on adventures, but I've contributed a little bit here and there to some of the source books. Been writing for Torg Eternity since Fires of Ra, and still going.
Oh yeah, doing great.
Thanks.
And finally, Greg.
Hey, Greg Gordon, part of the Torg Eternity design team, one of the O-Torg holdovers, and General Curmudgeon. I'm ready.
You're being modest. One of the co-creators. You can say that.
Right. You got to sing your own praises here. No one else is going to.
Why we're here.
I want to look forward. I really do. It's like, the fact that I wrote something 30 years ago doesn't get me out of bed in the morning. The fact that we're doing, Orrorsh in year 2 stuff, that gets me out of bed in the morning. So,
So the focus of this panel is going to be Orrorsh, correct? Yes. What Orrorsh is all about. I see it now on the header. So I know Deanna's got some questions, but we should probably do a preface. What is Orrorsh all about, Greg?
We were kidding before the thing that Orrorsh is all about screaming mostly, but it's our shall we say more psychological and classic horror setting compared to Tharcold, which is our body horror splatterpunk horror setting. So you have it's a slower burn and yet deadlier. So
nice.
Yeah.
I just realized I wasn't logged into Twitch, so I gotta continue without me for a bit.
Sure. Well, but you had a pile of questions of your own, though, didn't you?
Yeah. Why don't I start with one of those, and then I can
kick us off on that, right?
Yeah. If you have any questions in chat, go ahead and ask. All right. So, first one is, did Greg's idea for the underwater Victorian colonies make the final cut? And if so, is there a chance for Captain Nemo-style submarines to travel between them? I love the idea of a werewolf loose on a submarine.
I'll say yes. I know for certain that a Delphi mission has been submitted with many of those ideas. What I'm calling Albion Nautica, the underwater section, makes it. I suspect, given how fast the book's filled up, we're going to talk about the PDF extras, but Albion Nautica is definitely going to be there. It's all part of the Gauntman scheme to slightly segueing into year 2. The ability to control shipping lanes and mostly sink things in shipping lanes is a really useful ability to have in a war. So and
in terms of the genre, you talk about elements of horror and cutting people off from safety. You're underwater. There's a lot of danger between you and escape. You have nowhere to go. That claustrophobia and all that, it's absolutely on brand.
Yeah, and I really like having what I call rational haunted house stories, where the heroes don't have to be complete, idiots to find themselves in danger. It's not like, why are there screams coming from the basement? Let me latch the door and look and lock myself in. Oh dear. So I want the heroes to make intelligent choices while still having legitimate peril. So underwater is a good place to go.
So, and on the bright side, at least you get a possibility for making dumb choices. Like, I hear a scream, I'm running towards it. I'm looking for the cue cards. Okay, you get a possibility. I mean, you're going to die, but okay.
Yeah.
And
That's
good horror
one
stories
round.
always have an element of isolation anyway. What a great place to isolate people, you know.
Yeah.
So many good horror movies out there that take place underwater. Like Underwater just came out last year.
I loved it. Like some people bagged on that. I thought it was great.
I mean, yeah, it was good.
Everyone's like, man, not great, but
I mean,
fine. I loved it.
I did too.
Also, for me,
I enjoyed it.
the idea that underwater living with sort of Victorian era technology as your backbone is lethal anyway. So you start from that base and you make it worse. So here we go, you know.
Let's see here. Another one. I was just talking to my fellow GM and his wife. She was arguing that in a horror game, death should not only be should not only be on the table at every moment, but most, if not all, characters should die. I argued that as much effort as people took to make their characters, death should only be on the table in dramatic scenes. What is the proper level of lethality in Orrorsh?
Wow.
I'll go last.
Okay. I am afraid that I lean a little bit toward his wife's argument in this one. Orrorsh, just deciding to go to Orrorsh is a life-threatening decision. There is no, it's never safe in Orrorsh, ever. And there are varying levels of danger, but a standard scene can kill you off. A cosm card can certainly do you in. So it's like, if you're not comfortable with playing with that level of threat, you should probably stay out of the cosm. And I'll be using a tagline, which, you know, from Marcus's namesake character, you know, Newman Marcus, the thing, but Marcus Newman. But his quote was, Orrorsh is never a place you want to go. It's a place you must go. And that's the feeling I think is right.
Brian, go ahead.
Mm-hmm. The Gotman's there, so you're going to have to go there at some point. One thing I've seen floated is the idea of creating maybe like sort of backup characters that they're the ones that go on that particular mission if you don't want to risk your main character. That is one approach that you might be able to take.
Yeah, so, and I come a little bit on the other side of this where, I mean, I think you're always at risk, right? Like the risk is real there, but I don't think the point of Orrorsh is not to kill your characters.
No.
Right? And this is something that we try to go into in the source book, where it's like, death is not what the Gaunt Man wants, right? Fear is what he wants. And the threat of death is one of the means of getting there. But it's like, I mean, if Storm Knights just won't go there because they're like, we're just going to die, there's not really anything frightening about that, right? It's like, oh, no, it's just a suicide mission, whatever, right? It's like, no, the fear is that, no, you've got to, like, one of my favorite lines in Farscape, was, fear accompanies the possibility of death. Calmness, follows its certainty. So it's like, we don't want you to be certain. Like, it's not going to kill everybody. There's that chance, and that's going to keep you on edge. But the point isn't to murder the party. And the secondary question that we asked was, what's worse than death? Right? Like, I mean, for players, that's like losing your characters really bad, right? So it's like, but if we're not taking them away, what's worse than dying? Like, what can we do to them that's going to give that dread, that tension, that like that risk? So I think that's the real question for Orrorsh. It's not death you need to worry about.
I suppose there is a trick to scaring the character and scaring the player. And I have not played it myself, but my understanding is the game is it Dread
With the Jenga Tower?
the Jenga Tower.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
that's good.
that where basically if it falls down, your character's dead.
Yeah, well, but it builds tension. I mean, in Dread, like literally everyone's gonna die. There's gonna be one person left at the end, and that's that's your final girl. That's the survivor, right?
Mhm.
And that's great for what it is, but that's not really what we want to do, And it builds tension in a very real and interesting way, especially if you suck at Jenga, which I do. But we had to take a slightly different take than that.
Okay, let's see here. Marquee Sparky Gaming asks, I have to ask, why so many spiders on that front cover? He's talking about it in Trifling Matter.
Brian?
That is something I don't want to give away, because the slow unraveling of that adventure is a huge part of it. So at some point, as you read or play or whatever the adventure, the cover will eventually make sense.
Right.
Right.
Yeah,
so
because
it's got a meaning embedded in it.
Yeah. The adventure is a deep dive around one particular horrific villain. And in Orrorsh, if you want to defeat a villain, you have to understand a villain. So, and this is what, like, one of the few times that we're going to be cagey about stuff, right? Is because that's literally what the entire adventure is about, is getting into like, all right, why is this creature the way they are, and why are there spiders everywhere?
Yep.
Don't like 8 legs. Sorry, this is not going to be a good one.
True.
Okay.
True.
So this one I'm not sure about the context, because I have not read everything in what's been written for the Orrorsh text, so I'm not entirely sure what he was talking about. But the questioner was asking if you can go into at least some vague details about the ritualist perk.
Oh. So, and this is all still cutting room, right? This is stuff that we're working on. And one of the things that we wanted to do with magic in Orrorsh is, there's combat magic, right? Which is, I bought my perk, I've got my spells, I cast stuff, I might blow up, but generally I'm going to be okay. And then there's this kind of other type of magic, and it varies from setting to setting, and it's based around, well, okay, I'm going to need a werewolf fang, and I'm going to need 5 gallons of blood. It's not very specific on where that blood comes from, but okay, and I'm going to need to do these, exactly, like these awful, potentially awful things to get specific effects. And this is where, again, you lean into your horror tropes, right? Where it's like in Isle, you've got, cool, I've got cure disease. All right, cool. Like, you've got lycanthropy. I've got you covered, bro. Like, I got this. You go to Orrorsh and it's like, well, that doesn't work. But there's a ritual you can do. Here's how you get rid of lycanthropy. You're gonna have to climb Mount Everest, and you're gonna have to do this, and you're gonna have to do that. But in the end, you won't be murdering people in your sleep anymore. Isn't that great? So that's not helpful, I know, but that's where we're coming from, in the design area of it, is trying to make adventures out of, those kind of fetches to do specific types of magic. Because Orrorsh magic is all eyeballs and blood, and it's the worst.
Actually, that's a good segue into something that's come up recently. Speaking of werewolves, there has been an animated discussion on the forum about the preview of the Werewolf Perk, and we had said that we were looking into maybe how it's not a death sentence necessarily. Is there anything we've got yet that can address that?
Not that we've released to playtesters, but yeah, in my draft, yes, there are ways, but still, it is a curse. In an Isle, it may not be a curse. In a Orrorsh, it's a curse. So to me, that's one of the hardest things about Orrorsh is there are tropes that you take a look at, like from World of Darkness, and go, "Oh, that'd be fun." Well, but no, that's not Orrorsh. The Gotman doesn't want this to be a power trip or pleasant in any way. He wants you to suffer.
Yeah.
If you have, I would define Orrorsh is the cosm where the High Lord himself redlined every world law, rule, and perk. That's the way I approach it. He has built a game you can play and occasionally win, but on average, the house wins. He's the house. So it's a very different cosm from that sense. And I'm writing sidebars now to try to say, here's what this is about. If you really want to do, World of Darkness setting, you're probably better off setting it like an Isle, really, than you are in Orrorsh, because Orrorsh is about the fear. And back to the lethality discussion for a second. The reason I think player character death is higher is they're not the object of the fear. When the 10 million people around Mumbai know that heroes get slaughtered by these things, their fear is what feeds him. So it's, and that way the focus from Gottman's point of view isn't the Storm Knights. It's about every other of the millions of people in his realm. It's a different focus too.
Yeah, and my impression was when people were like, "Oh my God, that's horrible! I don't want to be a werewolf." I was like, "Yes, nailed it!" Like, that's exactly where we want to be, right? Because in every game term that matters, werewolves are awesome. It's like, cool. I've got like all these resistances and all this strength and all this stuff that makes me better than regular heroes. And the fact that people are like, "Oh my God, like I don't know if I want to be a werewolf," it's like, oh. Yes, like that's the feel that we want. You are cursed. Like not counting World of Darkness, right? But like American Werewolf in London and the old Werewolf TV show and other versions of that. It's always about, can I get out from under this curse before I kill the people I love?
It's not Teen Wolf.
Yeah, like that's the werewolf story, right? And you can do other versions of that, but Orrorsh, that feels like that should be their story. And yeah, you're fighting the clock, and you're damned. Like once that happens, and then the other fallback is, hey, if you took that perk at character creation, that's what you signed on for, right? Like you want to play that story, cool. If you get lycanthropy, that means you died. So this is like a second chance. So. We don't owe you anything at that point. You got murdered, man. The fact that you're still kicking is probably a good thing. But I'm mean. I'm well known as a mean bastard when it comes to this. So it might be softened, for the printed book. I don't know.
Okay, PK, let's go to the chat. PK Levine says, in original Torg, there was a strong vibe that the Victorians were intended as part of the horror, where it seems like Torg Eternity has them being a bit more heroic. Is that intentional? Will the Orrorsh book do more to play up the fear of colonizers angle?
In my opinion, and in the stuff I've been writing, and like I said, we're still writing in the cutting room, Victorians are absolutely part of the ecosystem. That's the problem. They are part of the problem. So go ahead.
I would say yes and, right? So here's the thing. They're like plague rats, right? They're not inherently bad in themselves, but they've got Orrorsh all over them. So everywhere they go, they're carrying Orrorsh with them, and so they're a part of the problem. But and this was crucial, and this came straight from Shane, in his write-up, right? We don't want the Victorians themselves to be evil. Like they're victims like everybody else, right? They've had this thrust upon them and they're trying to survive. And though their values are skewed to us, they are heroic in their own way. Like they are definitely the heroes of their own stories, and that can clash with our modern notions of, oh man, you slap the title of colonizer on someone and they're a villain, right? And and we play with that a little bit because they're starting colonies, in India, and India's gone through that before, and they're like, look what the neighbors are doing, like warning bells. But at the same token, it's like they kill werewolves, like they fight vampires. They're pretty good neighbors in that way. Like, I don't know, like that makes it tough. Like, do we live with this? And
I'm probably on the slightly farther down the other end of the spectrum. I think they've gone too far. They have institutionalized some elements of corruption that they can't get away from. And so in order to kill the werewolves, they've done stuff that helps the Gaunt Man terrorize, the hundreds of thousands of people. Yeah. And they have things that actually are pretty effective at monster hunting, but in the long run, they can never, ever get rid of Orrorsh. They can't.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, sure, but I think they're still good guys, and I think that makes them interesting good guys. Like the cursed werewolf, right? It's like, yeah, is there a way out of this box? Let's watch them try. Good on them.
Yep.
So we intentionally do not cast them as villains, even though they are part of the problem.
Forbin Project asks, so in each realm you have created zones which give different play experiences within the realm. What can you tell us about how you have zoned the Orrorsh realm?
Oh man, I don't have the document in front of me. We've got 4, and they were really pretty cool. Like breaking it down like that really helped us zero in on different parts. So I think we roughly broke it into like sometimes it's geographical, sometimes it's cultural or strata. This time it was geographical, and like northeast, northwest, southeast, southwest were the big ones. And I know one of them really was hauntings. One of them really was killers and paranoia. And they're all basically like major types of horror stories. Does anyone remember what the other 2 are? Is haunting?
You had ghosts, killings, demons. What was the 4th one? I was just reading this like 3 days ago.
I know, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember the 4th one. I never remember the 4th one. I'll have to go.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Well, someone's talking. Someone else can check.
Ravaged Southwest. Ravaged Southwest.
Yeah. So.
Yeah,
it'll make sense when you get there.
Yeah,
but yeah, they're all 4 breakdowns.
Corpse reanimation.
Oh yeah. That was
zombie.
The enemy within, essentially. One of with the ravage side. That's the one of us is it. Like it's taken one of us, and yeah, you get that heightened. Who goes there? Like, what's happening? That's its feeling. But then, but like leaning into the haunted side, like that created the whole subclass of the animated puppets and things like that. It's like, ghosts just grab things here. And like they're my favorites now. The little puppets with knives. Everyone loves them.
Forbin Project asks, does the Orrorsh sourcebook go into any additional detail as to why in the Day One Isle adventure there's a statue of the Gaunt Man in a temple dedicated to Corbal?
Not yet.
No. Yeah. Let's put it this way. That's not something that we've forgotten about. Like that was a very intentional, breadcrumb trail, but that's not something they really care about in Orrorsh.
Yeah.
But I think we've established that the Gaunt Man's been a lot of places and has got his fingers in a lot of pies and has that deep connection with Isle, and has, between Uthorian and other things, and has for quite some time.
Mm-hmm.
PK Levine asks, is the one of us sub-cosm, Warzone, I'm guessing, the one that ends up with the shared Orrorsh Pan-Pacifica area?
It doesn't. And actually, like right now, there aren't there aren't any shared zones between those two yet, are there? Deanna, you're the map
Yeah,
mistress.
at the end of year one, yes.
But there will be, but
On the map.
there's I believe those are going to be dealt with in the Pan Pacifica.
And Pacifica.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't remember what subgenre those crossovers occur, but
Yeah.
I mean, I can tell you that in a trifling matter, we don't go there. As interesting as that might be, but we had plenty of other things to do around
Right.
Orrorsh.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Rystar asks, how are rituals used offensively?
So, and again, I don't remember the details around how we did a ritual, but essentially it would be when you do a ritual, it is going to be, this isn't the make my sword do more damage ritual. It's the I'm building a voodoo doll of Bob, and this is the kill Bob ritual. Like,
Yeah.
and it's going to take a week to do, and I'm going to need some stuff from Bob. Probably would have been easier to just stab him, but hey, like once I get all this done, now a week later and many tears and much blood and castings, now Bob is really, really hating life.
Sometimes you just can't get the revenge you want from just stabbing somebody. So
Right, yeah, exactly. It's like if you want to hurt someone exactly, if you want to hurt someone easily, use regular magic or a gun or whatever. Like, but rituals are all about taking it that extra step. It's,
I think we lost Greg.
yeah, Greg fell
we
out.
did.
We didn't like him anyway.
Oh, internet.
All of our
Okay,
all the things that messed
so
up.
Yeah, no, like all our
I see
windows are gonna be all
Junkie
messed
asks.
up now.
I see Junkie asks, considering the geography, will we see mixed zones with Tharkold? I guess that's more of a year 2-ish question.
Yes, they're working that direction. It's gonna be a while. It's gonna be a while because Gauntman, unlike the other High Lords, isn't spreading, which is a weird thing. Like he's consolidating rather than expanding.
Yeah.
And Tharkold didn't expand for so long, and now they're racing outwards, but they had a slow start, so it hasn't.
Yeah, there's still a lot of distance too between. Asia's big.
Asia's big, right?
Yeah.
Asia's big, y'all. And there's some geographic features that also make that difficult, right? Like where their seams tend to be it's super difficult ground, and the population density drops there, and it's just not as inviting for High Lords. Or I guess we could take it, but we're not getting that much energy
Empty
for this.
deserts.
Yeah.
Unless you're Mobius, you're probably not interested in desert.
Yeah. I think we're getting Greg back.
Oh, there we go. Everything realigned magically.
Oh, good. That's good.
So Malguest writes.
Well, Malguest knows the answer.
Questions now. In original Torg, the creatures of Orrorsh was amazing in adding monsters to the cosm. Are you planning to do something similar in the future?
Now that Greg's back, that sounds like a great
Yeah,
question.
I guess that's a Greg question. Did you catch that, Greg?
I know.
Yes, a
I've
bestiary.
been
Yes,
pushing a creatures book.
So.
I think it would be fantastic.
I guess another thing you might be asking is that one that we would be looking for fan input into?
I would say I'm looking for Infiniverse exchange input. Yes. So from that route, yes. But from forums or something, probably not. I'm trying to increase the synergy between us and Infiniverse exchange.
Right. And also because forums. I'm sorry, Brian. Go ahead.
No, please go ahead.
I was gonna say forums. For example, when I was running content, I would never read forums. Deanna can read forums, and she can tell me, "Wow, there's something important going on, and you need to know about it." great. But the reason I kept that separation is for our own protection as well as your protection for ideas. There needs to be that barrier between your ideas and ours, so that we're free to just do what we were going to do, and not like, oh man, somebody posted that on a forum. We've seen it. We can't unsee it. Now we can't do the thing that we were going to do because people are going to think we stole it. So forums are not your way to get the foot in the door. The Infiniverse exchange is, because, like Greg was saying, like that's our kind of recruiting ground, and it's like it's there and you do it. And we still don't necessarily read those, but when they trip off in a certain way, that's when we can swoop in and be like, cool, now let's recruit. Like, this is good.
Yeah, we can hear the traffic. If somebody's got something that's good, especially if it's being talked about on the forums or on the Discord server, we'll see it probably. As far as like ideas and stuff like that, for me as well, even though I might see them, as soon as I realize it's some content that it might be something that I'm writing about, I stop reading it at that point. So it's sort of like I might be aware that there is something there, but I don't know what it is. Like, for instance, I know that there was a group of updated cyber papacy Gospog before the cyber papacy book came out, and I intentionally didn't look at that because I knew I was working on the cyber papacy book.
Right, and we just have to do that, right? Like, that's for your protection and ours. But we're always looking for people, right? So.
Given the lone refuge nature of the island of Victoria, does this result in a greater cultural mix of Victorian denizens, refugees from the overrun lost areas of Gaia, etc., like the Rajani or the Romani from original Torg, etc.?
Rajani are in the book. And I think we've got 3 or 4 other cultures from I just forgot the name. We just said it. What's the Victorian?
Romani?
No, the world.
Gaia?
Gaia.
Yeah. I think we list, and we don't go into great detail on them, but we list at least 3 or 4 cultures that make it over the bridge, and before we completely destroy the entire cosm.
Yeah, we won't have to do that cosm book. Let's see here. PK Levine asks, is the ritual system going to put most of the work on the GM? If I'm GMing, am I going to have to come up with the steps, components, etc., that the PCs have to acquire?
We're not going to go into too much detail on rituals, right? Like, I'm being vague about it on purpose at this point. Like, it's a system, like, I don't even know how far we are on it. The intent is stuff like that's going to be driven by tables. It's not going to be, here's a half-page thing, like, now make up your own system. No, like, that's not what we're about at Torg, but I can't tell you specifically how it's going to work.
It's definitely on the table for surgery in my office. So I'm trying to make sure that the GM is one of the sources of input, but isn't the sole source of input on the rituals, because I don't want them to have to be interpreting every player request for something and turning it into ritual. I've played those, and that makes my brain hurt by about Ritual 6. So no, I want to systematize it a little bit more on adding elements from the other parts of the table. But that's still a work in progress.
Yeah, so the coolest
my voice is completely gone.
Yeah, yikes. Yeah, I mean, to me, and the coolest one, like, for those GM aids is what Lehman's working on, and I think it's done actually, is if there are multiple tables. So we talk about, like, nightmares and how they've all got these mysteries that you have to investigate and all that. And that could put a lot of work on the GM. Like, oh man, I want a master vampire. Now I got to make up his history and his weakness and his this and that. And it's like, well, we got you covered, right? Like, just like the other cosms have their adventure generators and things like that, we've got a monster generator, or a nightmare generator that's going to give you like power those things for you. So like you can choose, you can make them up. If you got your own ideas, great. But if you're stuck, here you go. Like I say, we've got your back. We did the work. You're welcome.
Airman mode. Forgive me if I'm butchering the names. Any interesting plans for player character Sakalum Miracle Workers?
Big.
You mean other than their slightly freaky miracles? What sort of details are you looking for?
Well, he doesn't say anything more there.
Yeah.
Okay, so one of the things I'm adding are not exactly secret societies, but organizations that have been fighting Orrorsh from the Gaian side that transplant over. The Sassalum has a couple of those, so their role will be explained in there, and there are also things like the Alhambrans. There's stuff that come from the New World, so that they have, there are official institutions for dealing with what is clearly their existential crisis. So they'll fit into two of those.
Wait a minute. Different sub-organizations within a faith? I'm sure they get along great.
Oh yeah. They're, there's no reason for secret societies not to be open and sharing,
Our Forbin project asks, each of the darkness devices has both a personality but also a flaw. What can you tell us about Hecaton?
Hecaton is the only darkness device in a losing battle with his High Lord. I think that's probably the best way to make him distinct.
Yup. I agree concurrently. It's like, yeah, what's Hecaton's weakness? That it's the freaking God man that brings it. Like, oh, man.
Yeah.
Does Hecaton know it's on the losing end of that?
It does, and it's not happy about it.
No,
it does. Yes, that makes that. Anyway, I'm hoping that'll lead to some of the stuff in year 2. But the darkness device is not an idiot, and it's taken a while to go like, oh, well then.
Yeah. So the matching relationship for this, like, there's a computer role-playing game called Jade Empire, and one of the subplots, their Darth Vader character, essentially, you can make him serve you if you're evil enough, essentially, but the gag is supposed to be like, yeah, I will serve you, and then I'll be free, because eventually you'll die, and once you're dead, finally my time will come. And then if you're evil enough, you essentially become immortal, and the bad guy's like, come on, like, I'm in this contract now and I can't get out. Why? Like, that's how I feel like Hecaton and the Gaunt Man went, where it's like, cool, you have all this power, but your time is limited, and I'm immortal. And kind of the Gaunt Man's become immortal, and it's just like, oh no. How do I escape
like
from
a
this?
bad marriage of two immortal beings, and there's nothing that can divide them.
The divorce is gonna be ugly.
Hey, give us some more questions, chat people.
Did you have others from your forum?
Actually, no. So is there anything? We're what, I think 15 minutes left.
Awesome.
Is there anything you would like to talk about? Is there anything that you guys would like to talk about that we haven't talked about yet?
I'm gonna put one word out there and see what Greg and Brian, say about it. Steampunk.
So, I would say that Albion Nautica.
Brian, you're muted. Brian, you're muted. We didn't hear that.
I am?
Oh, there you are. Okay. We lost you for a sec there.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, Greg.
Let's say the most steampunk place for me is the stuff I'm writing on Albion Nautica, which is absolutely, 20,000 fathoms under the sea level technology, spread out along the ocean floor. So that's the most steampunk place. But I don't want to make continental Orrorsh too steampunk. I want to have a few elements in there because that's not the focus of the classic horror stories, because whenever you have steampunk, technology becomes a focus, either the effect of technology, the use of technology. And in Orrorsh, that I personally think that should be an afterthought. So the steampunk is mostly going to be for the undersea portions of Orrorsh, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that. And another one of the main tropes of horror is that your technology is not good enough to save you. Something goes wrong, your cell phone stops working, right? For whatever reason, technology is just, it's not going to be the thing that saves you. So whether the steampunk is there or not, you still got the same problems, right?
Yeah. And so in the sections that I've done, especially like in the urban areas, the steampunk's more subtle, but it exists mostly to fill technological roles that civilization starts to come apart without. Like you don't get the societal collapse. Like, for example, the pedicabs, which are very common in India, and like some people have never actually seen one, and I'm like, oh man, I have to like describe these. Where they're these kind of 3-wheel, 2-seat almost, cabs, and 80% of the vehicle traffic is these, and they run on petrol, not very much of it, or gasoline. They would call it petrol, we call it gasoline, whatever. But but this kind of like the lifeblood. Most people don't have their own cars, but like that's how traffic works. So it's like, hey, how would that work in a lower technology environment? What are they transforming into? They're turning into something. So we've kind of got like a steam powered version of that, because that would still work, and you can do lots of cool things with steam and coal. And the other thing that I liked about that is that makes coal mines more important. And mines can be very scary places. So you're like, okay, someone's got to go down and dig in the dirt and get this stuff, but go into that dark cave and hopefully nothing's in there but coal. Yeah, and that keeps society functioning in a way where we don't have to say like, oh, by the way, urban areas don't work the way they do now. It's like, well, they still kind of do. Like it's just sort of level setting that gap. It's filling it a little bit. That's how I treated it.
And in the writing, we didn't really get too much into that either. If game masters want to plop something in, I think there's room for it. But I didn't presume that you're traveling around in a steam-powered Zeppelin or something. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah, I some people have noted the steampunk arm of one of the archetypes.
Yep, people lose limbs. That's a thing that we should be able to build, right?
Let's see here. Forbin Project asks, will we see the sign of 6?
I don't know yet. I think that might wait till year 2. I'm not positive. I'm still. I have so much stuff I want to jam into the book.
It's not in my section, I can tell you that.
Yeah, I'm running out of space. So
Malagest asks, is Perok, the Gauntman's Ravagon, going to be in Torg Eternity? Will there be a section on how Ravagons play into the game later on?
There is, in fact, a Ravagon section that I wrote, and Perok has some awesome art. Perok's thing, and I hope I'm not transposing him with one of the other main guys, but he's the flayed one among the Ravagons, and most of his flesh has been flayed off, and he's just this rasty, Rorshian, horror, but also Ravagon. Yeah.
So we'll count that as a yes.
Forbin Project asks, in all the other Realm books, you've done a great job of drawing upon the real-world politics and culture of Earth. What is the effect on India's politics of the Orrorsh social axiom?
So, well, I'll let everyone else go first, then I'll do my take, right?
That'd be great, because I don't have really any input on that part of the source book.
So what I want to do is, man, once like the general strike started in India, I really started trying to think about how those such as social movements, which butt up against the edge of the Orrorsh social axiom, would change the flow of possibility energy and stuff into the realm. And I decided that they do. And so I'm writing those sections, but I'm still not positive that I've come up with something that is at all balanced for the game. But yes, I want that in there. I want some of the other, there's some stuff that Darrell has written about what you so like the Hyderabad area, sort of the high-tech centers of Orrorsh are affecting things. So the answer is yes. But again, I guess Orrorsh needed to be about, I don't know, 60 pages larger. So I would say
for this one,
yeah. So more information will be coming out because I think it's really interesting. And I think Orrorsh should be one of the most interesting places because for my money, the Indian politics and culture can take advantage of core Earth law of hope to establish things that will absolutely astonish the Gauntman. In other words, he's rigged the game and the people of India are figuring out a way to win anyway. And so at least I find that struggle really interesting and I want to write more about that. But I've got a lot of rules and stuff I got to do first.
Yeah, so I've spent time in India. I have many friends from that time. So like some of the things that I wrote, culturally about it is like the very first thing to say about it is anything that you can say about the Indian culture, like in their movement and what they're thinking, is so riddled with exceptions as to be patently false immediately upon saying it. Right? Yeah. It's a so multi-layered, and it has so much diversity. Like the diversity within the culture itself is so strong that it's easy for us to underestimate, because like all 50 states in the United States have various different cultural leanings, but there are still very distinctly American things about it. I mean, and that's kind of true in India too, but it's really extreme. Like as you go to different areas, the cultural mores are completely different. So we talk a little bit about how to navigate that, and that's one of the strengths of India that's very easy to underestimate, like as a culture, is how adaptable they are to the circumstances that they're faced with, because they've done it over and over and over again for centuries. Like here's this huge problem. Well, okay. And they just keep going, And so, yeah, that definitely comes in, and we do talk about how there's a certain level of expectation that comes with the social axiom dropping to essentially Victorian attitudes, and how those attitudes can affect people. And I mean, in a shorthand way is when you get something wrong about India because you as a game master don't know, that's totally that social axiom, like that's your excuse. We don't want to excuse it, but that's your excuse. When someone calls you and says, hey, no, that's not how it works. You're like, oh, well, it does now. Thanks, Mr. Social Axiom Drop. But we try to give you tips, not even like a travel guide, but just like, hey, like as someone who's been here and experienced this, here's some little things to know about that'll help with that verisimilitude. And we talk about the head bob. If you guys have ever seen it, is that yes or no? What I just did. Neither. It means I'm excited. Come on. And we can describe that and help people get that.
So we are coming up to the top of the hour. I see the call from Robert to wrap this up. Do we have any concluding thoughts?
I would say that at the absolute top level, the Orrorsh sourcebook will show you why the Gauntman is the one we really, really have to be afraid of in terms of the possibility wars. That his mechanisms and the scope of his plans are just hideous.
Brian?
Well, speaking for the adventure anyway, I'm hoping that we can provide everybody some sort of variety of different kinds of horror scenarios and experiences. But it is definitely trying to make it as creepy, as scary as possible. Fewer fights than you might see in like Isle or Nile Empire or something like that. A lot more investigation. But I'm hoping it gets under people's skin a little bit. That's the goal. As much as that's possible.
Yeah.
Spiders.
My hope is the source book paired with that adventure are going to teach a lot of people about running horror games. Like teach them things that they didn't really that if they knew, they didn't know they knew. And if they haven't tried it, it's going to help them run a better horror game, whether it's for Torg or anywhere else. And
my writing partner is
Tracy Sizemore. Yeah.
Yes, and she's great, and she's taught me a lot about how to string out an adventure a bit. Pull back a little bit from the more action-oriented stuff that I tend to go towards, and I think it's been a really wonderful learning experience, honestly. And I'm pretty proud of the end result.
Yeah, I think it's great. I've read it. I think it's great.
Oh, good. Thanks.
So
where the cosm is the darkest, that's where the heroes are the brightest, shine the brightest.
So I think that's all the time we have. Hopefully Robert can disconnect us because I don't know how to do that.
Robert, help! We're just gonna sit on here.
I just failed my fear chest.
I can't log off. No.
You guys are going right into the next
Yeah, I mean.
Yeah, that's true. The next panel is year 2.
Yeah, I guess that's true. I mean, well, I guess they probably want to divide up the panels for YouTube or
stream.
Like
yeah. All right. Well, thanks for having me on, guys.
Thanks for being here, man.
Yeah.
Thank you, Brian.
Good seeing you again.